Today now we come to Nyana Yoga. Hmm? Upadesha Sara, the first portion, Karma Yoga, then Bhakti Yoga, then Ashtanga Yoga. And all these three should be very clear in your minds what each yoga is and what it does. And we will just recap a little bit before we go into Jnana Yoga. When a person starts out in life, when a person lives life and goes through certain situations, what happens is in the beginning stages, they become paristiti vadi. Paristiti vadi means they look upon trying to change things on the outside to make everything better. They feel like they're getting disturbed by things outside, the people outside, the circumstances outside, the experiences outside. And so the whole effort of a person is to try and change my outer surroundings. I'm not getting along with my coworker, so maybe I should shift positions. I'm not liking this place where I live, so maybe I should move apartments. This weather is just, it's too much for me. It's too warm. I need to go somewhere else. And so when a person starts out in life, they are paristiti vadi because sthiti means state. Para sthiti means other state. They're trying to fix something outside of them to make them feel at peace. This person hasn't come to any of the yogas yet. And many times we are still here. We are still here. Many times we are still here because we're like, oh man, only if this were better, then I would be okay. Then a person realizes that, you know what? It doesn't really matter what the outside is like. I can just fix my mind. I can just put a mental switch and I can fix my mind. And this person becomes manasthiti vadi. Sthiti means state, and mana means mind, where they rely upon their minds for strength. They rely upon their minds to fix things. So if things are not okay, they'll change their attitude. They'll calm themselves down. It's okay. It's okay because the outer circumstances will always be different. They'll keep changing, they'll keep going up and down, but it's okay. I want to make sure that my mind is stable. That's called manasthiti. And the art of making one's mind stable is through these three yogas. Through karma yoga, bhakti yoga, and raja yoga, it makes our mind stable. Karma yoga makes our mind stable because it gets rid of our likes and dislikes. When we see that our action is an offering to God, it's not about what I like, what I don't like. This is just an offering to Bhagavan. It gets rid of raga dvesha. That's what we call Ishwararpana buddhi. When I have that attitude that, look, whatever comes in my life is prasad. That's called prasada buddhi. That gives me immense calmness. So if death comes, if sickness comes, any such thing, calamity comes, we accept it wholeheartedly, knowing that whatever it is part of that divine plan. So karma yoga gives us peace of mind in this way, and we're able to fix our minds. Bhakti yoga gives our mind peace in terms of surrender. We just surrender everything to God because we believe that there is this divine God's totality represented by our Ishta Devata. And that God is looking out for me. That God is taking care of me. That God is doing the best for everybody. And I surrender to that God. And that gives me so much peace. And then Ashtanga Yoga is this kind of yoga where we really kind of fix our minds. We make it more single pointed. Ashtanga Yoga is really for a distracted mind. The mind is so distracted, it can't focus. Every now and then it's looking here, it's looking there, it's going all over the place. It can't stay still. And so Ashtanga Yoga comes, tells us, okay, yama, niyama, first fix your lifestyle. Then pranayama, do some asanas. Slow down. Basically, what Ashtanga Yoga is telling us, slow down the mind. Because when we slow down the mind and when it's more spaced out, then we have that ability to think clearer. So these three yogas, they aim at fixing our mind, and they fix the mind very well. But the issue with these three yogas is that they accept the reality of the mind. So the first step with these three yogas is they accept that there is a mind. They accept there's a mind to begin with, that I have such a mind. And now with that mind, I must take it and I must purify it. I must purify it. I must make it single pointed. That is step 2. Then step 3 is that after I make it pure and single pointed, then I must transcend that mind. I must know I'm not the mind. And step 4, I must abide in that mind, in the self. I must abide. That means realize that the mind is the self. I must abide in the self. So there are so many steps. And the step involves, as I said, accepting that there is a mind to begin with. So when we have this example of Vedanta, wherein that famous example of the rope and the snake, and there's a snake which appears in the rope, the three yogas are already accepting there is a snake. There's a snake appearing in the rope. Now, what do we do about the snake? How do we make the snake less poisonous? How do we make the snake not harm us? How do we make the snake, calm? How do we calm the snake down so it doesn't hurt us? So these three yogas are just aiming at fixing that snake. Let me just fix that snake. I accept that there's a snake there. I see the rope. I accept that there's a snake there. Let me fix it in whatever way I can. But when we come to Nyana Yoga, it is called the direct path. In verse 17, it says it is the direct path. Why is it? First, we will discuss, then we'll read the shloka later. Why is it the direct path? Because it's asking, is there a snake? Is there a mind? It's not taking into account that there is a mind that I have to purify and work on. It's asking, is there such a mind? Is there such an entity called mind? So in the example of the snake and the rope, what it is not seeing if there's really a snake there. It's turning on the light and knowing there is no snake. There is no snake. So that's why it's called the direct path. We don't have to go to the mind, purify the mind, transcend the mind, abide the mind in the self, because all of this is just dealing with that snake. There's Jnana Marga is just turning the light on and say, oh, there's no snake. Done. That is why it's called direct path. And this direct path is just that much. That's all. So what happens in Jnana Marga is this. A guru, a teacher will tell us, there is no snake really. There is really no snake. Just try and see. And we start examining. We start looking. Is there really a snake? Is there really a snake? And if we examine close enough, we will realize there is no snake. There actually is no snake. There actually is no mind. That mind is actually the self. That deep vichara or inquiry is called Jnana Marga. And that vichara, whenever, that ignorance that we have, it cannot stand inquiry. That ignorance, I don't know who I am. The more we inquire, ignorance cannot stand it. It cannot stand when we inquire. And the famous example, which I love and I mention quite often, is that, when, let's say there's a wedding and there's so many people that come to a wedding, and of course there's gate crashers. In every wedding, there's a gate crasher. And this gate crasher comes and they ask, oh, who are you? And this gate crasher, he says, I'm from the bride's side. So of course the groom side is taking care of this gatecrasher, thinking, oh my God, he's from the bride side. I better give him everything. And then the bride side asks the gatecrasher, who are you? He says, well, I'm from the groom's side. So the bride side gives him everything. It says, okay, well, he's from the groom's side. We have to make sure he's okay. And then they all start talking to each other and they say, oh, we never knew you had such a distant relative, who came. And the bride's side and the groom's side, they start talking to each other about this distant relative who all of a sudden came to the wedding. And they said, well, he's not from our side. And the other side said, well, he's not from our side. And they both go to him. And when he sees that they're both about to inquire who he is, what happens is he runs away. He disappears because they're both going to inquire who he is. And he can't take it. He can't stand it because reality will come. The mind is like that. When we full focus and inquire into the mind, what happens is it can't stand it. It can't stand it, and that it ceases to be. It just ceases to be, and the self alone remains because it thrives on ignorance. The mind thrives on ignorance. That's the way the mind, that's the fuel of the mind. Fuel of the mind is our ignorance, our desires. That's what keeps the mind popping and rolling and going. But the minute we sit down solid and say, what is that mind? Is there really such a mind? If we go deep into it, mind is gone. And you don't even have to sit for long hours to do it. Just do it for a couple of seconds and you'll see your mind will cease to be. What is that mind? So when we inquire into that mind, we realize that the mind ceases to be. It ceases to be. And how further can we inquire into that mind? Let us look at the reality of the mind. Is it really real? Is it? When we studied Tattva Bodha, the definition of Sat was very clear, right? It said that which is there in all three states of time as it is called Sat. It's called truth. Kalatraye api tishtati iti Sat. That mind is not experienced all the time. It's experienced in waking, partially in dream, and it's not really experienced in deep sleep. So that's something which is not experienced all the time. Can it be really true? That's something which constantly changes. We know how much our mind changes. Every moment that mind changes. Can it really be true? That it cannot be true because it's not there. It cannot be what we call sat because it's not there as it is all the time. It's not experienced all the time. So it's not sat. But at the same time, it's not asat. It's not like it's completely not there. So therefore, we call this mithya, which we also saw in Tattva Bodha. It is mithya. It is an illusion. This mind is an illusion. So when we inquire deeply into the mind, we find that it is an illusion. And that is called Nyana Yoga, the path of inquiry. This is how it's different. It's direct. The other three paths are what we call Pipilika Marga. Pipilika means ant. It's like the marga where it's very slow, step by step, step by step, step by step. Eventually we will get there. Eventually it will culminate in Jnana Yoga only because we have to know that the self alone is real and everything is false. This Jnana Yoga is what they call Vihanga Marga, like a bird. You just fly directly there. That's it. Huh? But you see, when you walk, walk slowly, there's less chance of accidents. Huh? You eventually get there. When you fly, if you fall from that flight, boom, you fall really hard. fall really hard. So whenever we travel, there's two ways. There's two ways to go, right? You can take a car and you can drive and you can go somewhere, which are the three yogas, and maybe it will take you longer, or you can take a flight and you can just fly there. And and both are okay, but listen, if you take a flight and if you fall, that will be a terrible crash. But if you drive and you go, and if you get into an accident, it won't be so bad. It can't be so bad as falling down. What does this mean? It means that because the path is so direct, sometimes we feel like, okay, Nyana Yoga, that's it, that's what I'm going to do. And it makes us feel and think like we can bypass purity of the mind, like we can bypass single pointedness of the mind. The real test of this is try it out. Try it out. Jnana Yoga is the direct path, but it takes a really strong mind to succeed in this path. It takes a really strong mind because one has to lose themselves, one has to inquire into themselves, one has to completely let go. And to be able to do that, one requires purity. So it's not that we can completely bypass purity of the mind and go straight to Jnana Marga. It takes a bold, brave person to do it. And if one can do it, then one should. But if one can't, then one should prepare well, knowing that that's what has to be done. Let's read the verse and then maybe I'll tell you a little bit more. Okay? So, verse number 17, I will chant and then you repeat after me. Manasam tu kim margane krite naiva manasam marga arjavat manasam tu kim margane krite naiva manasam marga arjavat. So here in this particular verse, it says tu. Tu means now we're going on a totally different track. We're going on a different track. But now, manasam. Manasam kim? What is Nyana Yoga? Nyana Yoga is saying, what is the mind? Not, oh, my mind needs to be fixed. Oh, my mind needs to be pure. My mind needs to be better. Nyana Yoga is, what is the mind? And margane krite means after having inquired, what is the mind? Naiva manasam. One realizes that there is no mind. Na eva manasam. And marga arjavat. This path, marga arjavat. This is the directness in this path. This is how Jnana Marga is distinctly different. That when we think about freedom, in life, when we think about what is really, really freedom, freedom is really being free of the mind. That is what is called freedom, being free of the mind. Because that mind, it is a mind. It's always going to be either sattvic, rajasic, tamasic. It's always going to be in so many places. It's always going to be in so many things. When we identify with it, that's called bondage. But when we become free of it, that is called liberation. Okay? So now I'll just summarize a few thoughts. And there's one point that I did not talk about because I want you to talk about it. We started today with how a person deals with life. First, they become paristhiti vada, wanting to fix outer circumstances so that they can become better. And as I said, most of us still do this. We're still in Paristhiti-vada. Then one comes to Manasthiti-vada, where we can fix our mind. No matter what happens outside, no matter what's going on, we can make it okay. We can make it okay because we can fix our mind. And those who are involved in any of the three yogas, they will have a much easier time. And in fact, that's the purpose of those yogas. But does it end there? No. Those three yogas ultimately should lead to Jnana Yoga. Ultimately, by practicing these three yogas, they should lead to Nyana Yoga, or one should go directly to Jnana Yoga. If one goes directly to Jnana Yoga, what is that? It is just questioning. It's not about fixing the mind, it's questioning, is there such a mind? Is there such a mind? It's about just examining things carefully. Just examine, is there a mind? And the mind will cease to be, and the self alone remains. Is the mind real? Is the mind always there? Or is it sometimes there? Is it changing? And if it's changing, how can it be me? And because it's such a direct path, it requires real strength.